So, next lesson in Power Standard number 2 of the functions, we are going to again determine the slope and the y-intercept of the properties of a linear line, but this time when we're given an equation. So, last lesson we looked at graphs. This lesson we're going to look at equations. Two questions I want you to ask yourself: where do I find the slope in the slope-intercept form? And I kind of alluded to this in the last video. You find it where it's the coefficient with the x. It's the m, it's the value that's being multiplied by the x. And the other question is, where do you find the y-intercept in slope-intercept form? It's always the b. It's always being added to the m and the x. So don't get that confused. Sometimes you may see it, whoops, this should be a b. Let's change it so it's easier to see. Y equals b plus mx. Doesn't change which one's the slope. The slope is always connected to the x, being multiplied times the x, and the b is always being added to the slope and the x value. Or I should say variable. So looking at this, we have 3 columns here. Here's our equations. That's the given. What we have to do is rewrite it in the correct slope-intercept form. So in correct y equals mx plus b form. Even though I just told you it could be b plus mx, but normally if a teacher asks you to put it in slope-intercept form, we always put the slope first, just like the name of the equation is, slope and then intercept. And then what is the slope and then what is the y-intercept? So our first equation, let's write it in correct slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. It is in the exact correct form. So I can rewrite it because there's nothing wrong with it. Exactly the same. Which one is my slope? Yes, 4/5. Keep hitting the wrong button there. Which one is my y-intercept? Yes, 7. And notice it says write it as a coordinate pair. So 0, 7. It's always 0. Go back to that graph. Remember, the y-intercept is on the y-axis and x is 0 on the y-axis. Next equation, this one's flipped around. Remember, it has to be mx. So we're going to make this first. So y equals, the sign goes with the number in the variable. So that's a negative 9x. And then we look at that 10. Notice there's not a negative in front of it, so it's a positive 10. That is in correct slope-intercept form. Which one is the slope? This one right here, the one that's attached to the x, the m that's being multiplied to the x. So my slope is negative 9, and we're going to write it as rise over run. So we're going to go down 9, and then my run would be 1, because if you've simplified negative 9 over 1, it'd be negative 9. That's the only thing it can be. What is my y-intercept? Look at my equation quickly. It's what's being added. So it's 0 and 10. Next equation, it looks kind of fun. Looks weird. Some people struggle with this one. So here's y equals, my m is there. There's nothing there, but in math, we can say us mathematicians are lazy. If it's just 1x, we don't like to put a 1 in front of it. We can just see it's 1x. So if you want to put a 1 there, you can. Now, notice there's no b. So think about this mathematically. What could we add to negative 1x that wouldn't change anything about the slope of that line? It would be 0. Okay, so this one, if we go through this, here is our slope. So we're going to write it like rise over run. So it's going down 1, and the only run it can be is 1. Anytime that's a whole number, it has to be over 1, because anything divided by 1 is 1, or sorry, is that number. And the y-intercept on this one is 0, 0, which means it's going through the origin, 0, 0. Okay, next one, pick this color. Y equals, now look, it's 15. It's not 15x. So I know that can't be my slope. I know that's my y-intercept. So I'm going to put that at the end. So what is my slope? Well, if there's nothing there, please don't put a 1x, because if 1x is there, that means it's increasing at a slope of 1 over 1. So that has actual slope, a positive slope. So if there's no x, that means it hasn't have a slope. That, remember from a couple lessons ago, is a flat straight line. That's the way that I like to ski, on a 0 slope, no steepness. So this would be 0x. Okay, So what's my slope? 0. If you want to put it over 1, you can. So, and then our y-intercept would be 0, 15. So our next problem here, if we look at it, it has 3 terms, and we normally have y equals mx plus b. So notice there's 2 values of x, and so I don't know, it's a while ago that we talked about combining like terms. So remember, you can take 2 terms that are on the same side of the equation and you can put them together. So since 6x and negative 8x are the exact same term, we can combine them together, add them together, which would make a negative 2. So it turned out y equals this negative 8x and this positive 6 makes negative 2x, and then the plus 11 is what's left. So we look what we have here. We have negative 2, which is part of the x, which means it's the slope. It's a negative slope. So it'd be negative 2 over 1. And then the 11 is our y-intercept. So it'd be 0, 11. Okay, this one you should recognize knowing this as a distributive. Remember, if there's a number in front of a parentheses, we're going to multiply. So we're going to make negative 3 times 12. We'll put y equals here. So negative 3 times 12 is negative 36. Negative 3 times negative 2x would make a positive 6x. So let's put it in correct order here. So we have y equals, looking for our slope with the x. There it is. Notice it's positive. You don't have to put the positive sign. And then looking for another term, remember the number comes in front. So if you need to circle it or box it so you don't mix that up, because if you made it negative 6x, that means the slope would be going down. That's much mathematically different than 6x with the slope going up. So if you were trying to make a ramp and you told the engineers or the people making your project, the construction people, that you wanted a negative 6 slope on that ramp, that's going to be wrong because you wanted a positive 6. So you're going to have the wrong ramp. Okay, negative 36. So quickly recognize, here's my slope. Rise over run, going up 6 over 1. And then my y-intercept is negative 36. So it's going to cross way down below the origin. Last problem, if we look at it, looks like fun. Now, here's the deal. There's my little y. I want them all by myself on the left side. So I got some things I got to get rid of. So first thing to get rid of is this 12 x's. If I don't want 12 x's on that side, I'm going to get rid of them by taking them off. In other words, subtracting them. So we're going to take negative 12x off this side, negative 12x off this side. Some of you like to put a line down there. So negative 12x minus 12x is going to give us nothing. We leave with a negative 3y equals. Now, do not take negative 12 from 30, negative 12x's from 30. They are not alike. Negative 12x's are technically x's. 30 is a value, a constant, not alike. So we're going to write it with the slope in front. Oops, it's supposed to be a 12. X plus 30. So again, negative 12x, what I wrote here, 30 is positive, what I wrote here. Now, I can't quit yet because this little y is still being bothered by negative 3. So since this is multiplication, remember I told you the slope, it's not a slope though, the coefficient times the y is multiplication, you're going to have to do the inverse, which is to divide. So I have to divide by a negative 3 to all these terms. So negative 3 divided by negative 3 leaves me with 1y. That's what we've been waiting for. Negative 12x's divided by negative 3x's actually ends up with a positive slope of 4x. And then negative 30 divided by positive 30 divided by negative 3 leaves me with the lovely negative 10. So after all that work, we have our equation. Y equals a beautiful 4x as my slope minus the 10. So slope is 4, so write it as 4 over 1. This would be rising 4 over 1 to the right, and it would cross at negative 10. Remember, we write that as an ordered pair because x is 0 and negative 10. Hope this helped. I love finding slope in equations, and hopefully you find some enjoyment out of this lesson.